And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, The John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
Kevin writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, the more Gavin Newsom uses the term mindful, the more evidence that we see that his mind is not so full.
That is something we are mindful of.
He used it twice in about 20 seconds today.
That's usually what he does.
Feces everywhere. No compassion.
I love that clip.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is an anchor each and every weeknight on Fox 11. He's also host of The Issue Is, which airs Friday nights on KTTV Fox 11 in Los Angeles and KTVU in the Bay Area. You can follow him on X at Elex_Michaelson. Elex Michaelson, welcome.
Hey, John. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. Let's start out by with a question that I can't figure out, and maybe you can. What the hell is Karen Bass doing right now? Let's look at what she did with Steve Soboroff, where she decided that she would take Steve Soboroff, who is a successful developer in Los Angeles, who's very civically engaged, who endorsed her in the last election, ran for mayor with the blessing and endorsement of former LA Mayor Dick Reardon at one point in the past, and said that, okay, he is going to be our recovery czar. We're going to put a builder in charge of rebuilding neighborhoods that were destroyed by the fire. Then she decides she's going to pay him $500,000 for 90 days worth of work from an unknown source of money. She never really identified where that money would come from. Then Rick Grinnell and others went nuts over that, and she decided she would pull the money and he would do it for free. At the same time, she's hiring one or more national recovery firms, I'm not entirely sure just exactly how many she hired, to report to her and her administration and not to Steve Soboroff. Then you look at the state, when Gavin Newsom came down with the people he is appointing to be his czars on the rebuilding effort, Steve Soboroff did not get an invite to the event. It's unclear whether or not Steve Soboroff factors into what the state is planning on doing for rebuilding these neighborhoods. What in the world is going on?
Well, I wish I could give you more of an answer of what's going on, but Mayor Bass has not sat down for an interview with me, or as far as I know, anybody else to really explain her thinking in depth. She has done a lot of these press conferences, but those are limited in terms of how many questions you can ask and how many follow-ups you can ask. I've been asking for an opportunity to sit down with Mayor Bass, who I've personally liked and had a great working relationship with for many, many years. And have been completely shut out since this thing started. And I don't think she's, taken the opportunity, as far as I know, with anybody to really explain her thinking. She has been sort of flooded with complaints and people attacking her or people making assumptions about her, but she has not really explained why she's doing what she's doing in any sort of in-depth way, and certainly not, according to the polls, in an effective way in terms of explaining her thinking to the people of Los Angeles.
Well, and here's another one. And at some point, someone in the news media should be able to have an expansive conversation with her about this one. But according to the LA Fire Department, they flagged 1,350 fire hydrants in Los Angeles that were broken and needed to be repaired. Their department doesn't fix and repair these hydrants. They're supposed to write it up and turn it over to DWP because it's a water issue, and DWP is supposed to fix them. Well, of the list of 1,350 broken fire hydrants that they found in the city of Los Angeles, none of them have been repaired. And some of those hydrants included some of the key hydrants in the Pacific Palisades that could have been used to help save those homes. The Department of Water and Power is claiming that they never received this list, that there were 0 broken fire departments in 2024, 0 broken fire hydrants in 2023, and they were unaware of any of this. Well, the fire department says, look, we can produce a list. Here it is. And they gave it, I think, to KCAL. And so that list has been published. And the mayor says, well, there are conflicting reports. Who knows what's true?
Here's what I do know that is true. The fire response to the Palisades fire did not work. I mean, we all were on the air for many hours watching this with our reporters on the ground, and there were no firefighters in sight. There was no water on a lot of the fire hydrants when some of the firefighters finally showed up. And for hours, we watched home after home go up in flames, and nobody was doing anything about it. So whatever squabbling we want to talk about in terms of the bureaucracy and paperwork, that fact is a fact. And we need to deal with how did that happen and what are we doing to ensure that that doesn't happen again, because it was a disaster and a complete and utter failure of policy. And yes, it is true that the winds were extraordinary, and it would have been probably impossible to stop a fire from starting or from some damage to happen from it. But it is also hard to imagine that there isn't more we could have done to have stopped it from being as bad as it was. Because it looked like during those days, we kind of just put our hands up and there was nothing that anybody could do. And it's hard to believe that that's true.
Well, to that point, the fire department says that the broken fire hydrants still haven't been fixed, and that there are many of them in very high-risk fire areas, designated areas that have been specifically flagged by the fire department that DWP hasn't prioritized and fixed.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that, as much as we talk about politics in terms of games and all the rest of it, like city services, basic city services, filling the potholes, making sure the fire hydrants work, all that stuff is really what this is all about. That's what governing is all about. And that's where, competence is so important to get things done.
When Gavin Newsom comes down to Southern California to tour the areas that were impacted by the fires, of late, he's been spending his time in Altadena and not in Pacific Palisades. Altadena, of course, is not part of the city of L.A. Pacific Palisades is. So when he's touring the homes in Altadena, he's there with Catherine Barger and not with Karen Bass. Do you think he's doing that specifically and strategically so he's not photographed with Karen Bass at an area that has been destroyed by fires?
Well, and also if you're running for president as a Democrat, the demographics of Altadena are better for him, right? If the first primary state is in South Carolina and you want to appeal to black voters and you're a wealthier white guy, it might be better to be seen helping a poorer black neighborhood than one of the wealthiest white neighborhoods in the country. So that may play into it too. But do I think that I pointed out on your show a few times that it is not lost on me that Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom have not done a joint press conference. I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think Governor Newsom is well aware that, politically, Karen Bass seems to be wounded right now, and it seems like he doesn't want to, be a part of that or potentially helping lift her up. As you know, and some in your audience might not remember, in 2022 when Karen Bass was running for mayor, and the entire Democratic establishment, including President Obama and Biden and Harris and everybody else, all came to Karen Bass's defense. Gavin Newsom did not. He did not endorse, saying that he was friends with both of them and has a friendship with Rick Caruso. Karen Bass remembers that. Gavin Newsom remembers that. And it's been interesting to watch in a lot of their maneuvers how they have not been on the same page. Look at this idea of reopening the Palisades. Karen Bass announces, we're going to reopen it to everybody. And the neighborhood screams, what are you talking about? Our properties are not going to be secure. We're going to have a bunch of looters come in there. That's not what we were asking for. We want to be able to go in ourselves safely and start the rebuilding process and start debris collection. And then Gavin Newsom steps in and provides the National Guard and allows the residents to do that. Bass has to reverse course. So it's clear that the two of them are not necessarily on the same page, even though both will say publicly that they are. Their moves and their actions tell otherwise.
We're speaking with Elex Michaelson of Fox 11 and host of The Issue Is, which airs Friday nights on KTTV and KTVU in the Bay Area. Elex, I know I've asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask it to you again because of all of the circumstances in the news cycle. And that is, Ricardo Lara, the insurance commissioner of California, is nowhere to be found. We have invited him on this program any number of times as people have a gazillion questions right now about what's going on with the insurance industry, not just the people, I might add, impacted by the fire, but other homeowners and policyholders in the state of California whose rates are certainly subject to change due to all of the devastation that was caused by these fires. But the FAIR Plan, which is the plan of last resort, recently said that they do not have the money to cover all the liability. And they are asking the state to allow them to pass those costs on as a reinsurance policy to the insurance companies that still do business in the state of California and to policyholders. And a portion of it will go to policyholders in a one-time fee, and a portion of it will go to the insurance companies, which I assume will pass along those costs to ratepayers in terms of increased fees in their insurance premiums. When I think it was a local news station in Sacramento, they initially reported on the story, they went to the Department of Insurance and they said, we'd like to talk to someone about this. All they would do is issue a statement and say, well, none of this has happened yet. But they wouldn't make the insurance commissioner available to have a conversation about it or give an expanded explanation. Have you had any luck at all, given the recent news cycle, at getting him on the air to explain what that department is doing?
I have not. I know that he was on our morning show on Fox 11, and he did answer questions there. I did see him on KTLA answering some questions there, which is more than he's done in years. So he has done some media appearances, but it's clear that there are a lot of questions about that entire process that is incredibly confusing to people. And a question also about what's the point of insurance? And the point of insurance is that so the company is there and ready to take care of us in case something goes wrong, not then everybody else has to pay for it down the road. So I would like him to be more transparent and more available. I certainly would be interested in talking with him more. This is he should, because if the answer is we're going to ask every person in California that has the FAIR Plan, whether their house was impacted by this or not, to now pay even more money after they already were screwed over by the insurance companies to begin with, which is why they're on the FAIR Plan, I think it would be helpful for them to get some answers.
His behavior is so atypical of other politicians in California. I'm sure your email looks a whole lot like mine, where we get press releases from every member of the city council, every assembly person, every member of Congress, where they're pushing something. There's something that impacts their district, their community, a committee that they serve on, and they want to be out in front of it, talking about it, and getting as much juice out of the squeeze as possible. For Ricardo Lara and the insurance commissioner's office, it's like they're in the witness protection program. They're doing the exact opposite. They don't want any part of talking to the news media at all.
Well, most politicians only talk when they think that it's in their interest to talk or they have a good story to talk about. Maybe he doesn't think he has a good story to talk about right now.
Perhaps that is the truth. Let's shift gears and talk about what's going on nationally for a second, because as clammed up as Ricardo Lara is and Karen Bass is here in California, Donald Trump in many ways has been the most transparent president in at least my lifetime, where the press is invited right into the Oval Office. He seems to be having these conversations with the press on a daily basis, and it's anything goes. I mean, if they've been putting restrictions on what kinds of questions you can ask, I haven't heard of it. Yesterday, Elon Musk was in there with him explaining what Doge is up to, and he was engaged in a two-way conversation with the press. What do you make of that strategy where they're just literally bringing the press into the office?
Well, we've gone from a White House correspondent being like one of the worst jobs in the country to being one of the best. I mean, during the Biden administration, there was hardly any opportunity to talk to either the president or the vice president, which is part of, I think, the challenge that they've had. I think I think it works well for Donald Trump, who obviously loves being on TV, understands good TV as good as anybody who's ever been in that office, and I think is fueled by this dynamic. It's clear that their strategy is to overwhelm the press with so much stuff happening all at once that it's almost impossible to pin him down on anything because there's just so much coming at you in every direction from all places. But I also think it's interesting that Trump doesn't really need a press secretary in the traditional sense because he's his own press secretary. And he enjoys the idea of shaping the narrative. I think he also realizes if something isn't working, he can get back out there and change the conversation really quickly to try to make it be about something else. And based off of, his success so far as president, he is absolutely not only dominating the news cycle, but dominating the policy. He is radically transforming the federal government, whether you like it or not, in quick succession. And it seems like both the Democratic Party and the media are so far behind where he is because he's moving so fast that he's able to just keep moving. And you see he's at like record popularity too. I think there is something in this country, whether you like what he's doing or not, there is a portion of this country or a portion just of people as a whole that want to have a sense that there is a leader in charge, that somebody has control, that somebody is strong. And all of the moves by Trump so far have indicated that he is a leader in charge after a president who seemed old and not in charge for many years. And so even though some people may not love all the policy specifics, I think they like the concept that somebody is strong. I mean, Bill Clinton for years said it's better to have somebody who's strong and wrong than weak and right. Donald Trump, love him or hate him, looks pretty strong right now.
If Donald Trump and Elon Musk are successful with Doge and they prevent us from essentially going bankrupt, which is what they're trying to do you think they'll get the credit that they deserve for doing that? And I say that because if you're a president and you win a war, everyone can tell that you did something great that is going to improve their lives. If you're a president, you land a man on the moon, you did something for science, you did something for the world that the history books will write about forever and ever and ever. If you're successful at cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse and having us live within our means, what you do is you prevent a bankruptcy in the future. You prevent Social Security from going insolvent. Well, people's lives don't change because of that, because your Social Security check continues to come in the mail every single month. There's no disruption to your service. But what they're trying to do is prevent that bad thing from happening in some future date.
And you're describing an incentive structure, which is why this has never been fixed before. The problem has only gotten worse. And really, I don't think was the animating issue for Donald Trump in his first presidency either. You've got this unique situation now, though, where you have Elon Musk, who is the wealthiest person on the planet, who doesn't really need to do any of this, but also becomes obsessed with problems, in part maybe because he's on the spectrum where he can't get off of something. And he now has the power and influence to potentially make a difference here. But I do think that the politics have changed a bit from even a few years ago that I think people are so frustrated with institutions and so frustrated with the government, and so many of them don't believe that institutions and the government can work, that there is some popular support behind this idea of let's hold people accountable because for so many years they haven't. And if the Democratic argument here, if the Democratic Party is just we're the party for government spending and they're the party cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, I don't know about the politics of that as like we're the guys helping keep government employees going. Like I don't know if the average American, obviously that's great with government employees, but for the average American, if that's a winning argument. And that seems to be a thing that Democrats are coalescing behind right now as one of their strongest talking points in terms of the press releases that you're talking about, the ones that you keep getting in your inboxes, that Democrats are really trying to hammer that point home and turn Elon Musk into a bit of like an evil character. And I don't know if everybody sees him that way.
Well, in a weird sort of way, if Musk and Trump are successful at this, they're going to improve the institutions in terms of how much people trust these institutions. If they're successful at having them live within their means and reining them in and getting them back to their core mission, and you know that the Border Patrol is going to protect the border, and they do a good job at it, and you know that if the FBI is investigating something or someone, they're going to play it straight, and political motivations are not going to be apparent, and the EPA is going to make sure that people get to rebuild their homes and they don't come over here and gum it up, then people are going to have more respect for these institutions than they do now.
Right. And we have this extraordinary moment in history where you have a president coming into his second term who's already been president and learned the lessons of it and is fairly popular doing it, who has control of all three branches of government and an almost cult-like devotion from members of his party, with the world's richest and most powerful guy spearheading this. I mean, there is an opportunity, this moment in time, to do this that maybe has never really been present in American history before. And neither Trump nor Musk are running for re-election, so they don't have to worry about potentially pissing some people off along the way. If this is a real thing, and we'll see if their relationship stands and they don't get annoyed at each other, and if there's real consistency here, and this isn't just talking points, I think it could be a really important thing. And also, I think could end up being a really popular thing.
And it could trickle down, because if you're running for mayor of L.A. and DWP isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not talking to the fire department, then having some kind of DOJ-like agency take a look at local agencies, local government here in Los Angeles, could streamline things and make things a lot more efficient.
And we don't think there couldn't be a DOJ for California homelessness spending? $24 billion, and the problem has gotten worse. You don't think that there could be some accounting in terms of how we're spending our money in this state? Of course.
Elex Michaelson, Fox 11. You can watch him weeknights delivering the news with Marla Tejas on Fox 11. And you can watch him Friday nights on The Issue Is on Fox 11 and KTVU in the Bay Area. Elex, what's coming up on this week's show?
We've got an extended sit-down with one of your favorites, California Attorney General Rob Bonta, talking in depth about his thinking, about the strategy of Democratic attorneys general talking every single day via Zoom on their strategy of fighting back against Trump, why he really didn't run for governor, what's going on with immigration, him pushing back, or me pushing back on him on the sanctuary state law, and all of that coming up this week on The Issue Is.
All right. We'll all be watching. Elex Michaelson.
There'll be some clips you might like, I think.
Oh,
there's Monday's show
Randy's
prep.
gonna like it. Yeah.
All right, Elex, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show under a half hour away, if you want to continue listening to us, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts, like when we have a politician doing their best Shang impression.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Jonathan in Los Angeles. Jonathan, hello.
Hello. Well,
Hi
I
there.
had two topics, either the inauguration with Joe Biden or the fires. Which one would you want to hear about?
Surprise me.
Well, let's talk about the fires. You just had a great interview, and I did hear a few clips from some Cal Fire person. I don't know what his name was, but he said that by the number of houses and if there would have been a response per house, they would have needed 26,000 fire trucks. And they don't even have, if they were all running, they don't have 26,000 fire trucks for the response to the fire. There was also a video that I've seen on YouTube for the 1962 Bel Air fire that was a firestorm. And it says the exact same thing happened with the fire hydrants. They had no water in them in 1962 from the same problem that if they're all open, there's not going to be any pressure. So it's the same thing they had going on in Palisades. So from 62, they didn't change anything. I almost swore. And then, I wanted to complain a little bit. I didn't say this to the call screener, but about Soberoff. I'm not happy with Soberoff. This is a guy that made a lot of money paying under the table wages to construction. And this is a guy that benefits from the illegal aliens. He'd like to have him here. I don't like seeing him in charge of anything here personally, but I don't run things. But I do believe that the main problem really truly was, John, I'm sorry that it's this way, but the wind did blow 70, 80 miles an hour nonstop. And I don't think that if they had 26,000 fire trucks and 5 guys to each truck with enough hose, that they were going to be able to stop as much as anybody thinks. I know that many homes could have been saved. I just don't think with 70 and 80 mile an hour fire burning basically, from east to west, out to the ocean at 70 and 80, I don't think they were going to be able to stop much of this for quite that long. It's a very alarming situation that there wasn't a bigger response in place 1 and 2 days ahead of time. That's a different concept and discussion. But as always, I think this is woo Wednesday, and you guys are always great, and I always listen. And maybe one day I can call back and talk about Uncle Joe at the inauguration. So, God bless you.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir.
Call back anytime.
Now, that would be a first, talking about Grampy Joe at the inauguration and not Lauren Sanchez. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
I was saving this one for later. Linda writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Did you see the fake doctor at the fire presser this morning? She looks like she's a character out of The Nightmare Before Christmas. Really ghoulish. How does she keep that job?
Wait, so she's getting in on that action still?
Well, the funniest thing is when the county does these press conferences, she doesn't speak, but she's just standing there off to the side for no reason, trying to be a part of this.
I wonder if she just wandered into the wrong room.
Yeah. Does seem like something she's supposed to do. By the way, LA County Board of Supervisors is having their open public budget hearings this week. And when they get to the Department of Public Health, we're going to get you that sound.
No, thank you.
Oh, so she's going to go on TV begging for dollars, hoping the board makes it rain?
Well, she has to present to the Board of Supervisors
Stop.
her budget.
Gavin Newsom was just in Southern California talking about the fires, and Randy, during his press conference in Altadena, there was an interesting question that was brought up about Southern California Edison.
What happens if SoCal Edison was to blame for the Eaton fire, Gavin?
Edison is now probing whether its electrical equipment sparked the Eaton fire. As we know, their equipment.
Is that Gavin breathing through his nose?
Oh, yeah, that was a deep breath.
Their equipment did spark the Woolsey fire, the Thomas fire, PG&E was blamed for the one in Camp Fire.
He did a really short breath when she mentioned PG&E. It's like, oh, no. I have to answer about this again.
And ultimately, in the settlements, ratepayers bore the cost.
Okay, that one sounded cokey.
Who's sniffling more, him or the fake doctor?
Bore the cost.
That sounded like he had a $20 bill up his nose.
Well, he's against plastic straws, isn't he?
SoCal Edison is found to have started the Eaton fire. Will ratepayers have to pay the cost again? And what is being done to make sure that electrical equipment does not spark future fires?
Okay, so the question underneath all the sniffing was, what were you going to make sure you do so if SoCal Edison is to blame to the fire, the ratepayers don't have to pay for it? Because that's what happened at PG&E. And what are you doing to make sure these utilities stop starting fires?
Good question.
So we've got to unpack a lot of this. There's no soundbite here, so you may want to keep the camera rolling.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
He's trying to make it seem like he's having a heart-to-heart, and he's really thought it through, and it's just a very long, complicated answer.
I was deeply involved as it relates to the Camp Fire, and the reason I start there, that led to the bankruptcy of the largest IOU, investor-owned utility in the United States of America, Pacific Gas and Electric.
And then you helped get them out of bankruptcy.
Oh, yes, we all remember that.
The process to get them out of bankruptcy led to the creation of a wildfire fund. That fund was set up with 3 IOUs that participated, including Edison, that have been paying into the wildfires fund to create a contingency that would allow them to access the resources and the dollars in that fund for precisely the concerns that have been raised as it relates to the possible and potential culpability of.
Wait a second. So in the wake of all these destructive fires, you told the utilities they have to start paying into a fund so when they're to blame for another one, they've got all this money, and they've been passing those costs on to us. So really, we're just paying more.
Well, and look at the damage. Is there any fund that you can squirrel away money that's going to have enough funds to cover the damage that a fire like this caused?
Wouldn't the smarter plan have been to take all of that money and force the utilities to underground their vulnerable power lines?
Seems reasonable to me.
I can't help it now. Every time I'm driving, I notice the power poles. I notice the power lines. And I'm like, another bad windstorm. This whole city's going down.
Come to my neighborhood. They don't allow it.
Of which no one has assessed that. No one. Anyone asserts that is asserting things without evidence. I don't think that. I know that on the basis of a deeply independent investigation.
Have you seen any of the videos, Gavin?
Even Edison is saying, oh, this doesn't look good.
That has profound economic consequences and a lot of litigants attached to it in terms of its ultimate determination. So I'm not predetermining anything. But in the expectation of another major wildfire occurring, SB 1054 was created, this wildfire fund, that has up to $21 billion of claims paying resources. Last I checked, and forgive me, no notes, and you caught me not off guard, but not necessarily up to speed on the exact numeric, but roughly $12 billion of cash was in that, but the ability to then even finance.
How much would it have cost to underground the power lines?
It's expensive, but it's worth it because if you destroy an entire neighborhood, that costs more.
Instead of spending money to fix your broken infrastructure, we'd like you to put a whole bunch of money in a bank account so you can pay out the victims when you inevitably cause another fire. That is not management.
No, and this is, by the way, the determination that the electric companies made on their own, which is why spend the money fixing the equipment when the payout is going to be cheaper because we're going to go into bankruptcy and we'll just restructure our debt there.
Finance beyond that up to $21 billion exists. I have independent experts that helped us create that fund in partnership with the legislature.
Like your lobbyist buddy at PG&E that you went to his birthday at the French Laundry?
Great cake.
That are also looking and stress testing at its capacity to weather a worst-case scenario along the lines that you suggested without impacting ratepayers. to the extent possible.
Yes, because SoCal Edison and PG&E bills have not skyrocketed since 2018.
In what world are ratepayers not being impacted by all of this?
To the extent possible. Again, stress testing the system, or at least the design of the wildfire fund that was created. Now, you have a FAIR plan, which is not a state-owned plan. I impress upon all of you, it was conceived in 1968.
The new FAIR line is, it's not our plan.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be blamed if they go insolvent or if they pass along all the cost to consumers.
It's not a taxpayer-funded plan, the FAIR plan.
No, but Ricardo Lara just made it so ratepayers who are also taxpayers get to bail it out when the insurance companies bail it out.
It is a syndicate pool made up of the admitted market, meaning your insurers, and they have reinsurance. They're in the process, and I believe in a few hours, the insurance commissioner, I'll let the insurance commissioner talk about the status of the FAIR plan.
Yeah, that's when he didn't talk, but he released that press release saying he's allowing the insurance companies to get bailed out by the ratepayers.
He is just the worst. Of all of the people we have elected statewide in those constitutional offices, he might actually be worse than Bonta.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
In relationship to, I know it's separate and above, but it's important, and derivative part about their claims capacity as it relates to their current assessment of the damage and the impact to their policyholders.
Now, I know this is a couple hours before the announcement, but Gavin, the assessment was the FAIR plan's broke.
And by the way, that's what they told us before the fire even started. What are you going to do? All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.